What does the most authentic star in professional wrestling do for an encore? After baring her soul to the world in the now legendary "I'm Not Acting" promo, Arissa LeBrock became something more than a wrestler. She became a phenomenon. The weeks that followed were a coronation. Every arena she entered greeted her with a deafening roar of approval. Fans held up signs that read, "We see you, Arissa," and "Reality is our champion." She didn't pander, she didn't smile for the cameras, but she fought with a newfound fire, a visceral intensity that made every one of her matches feel like a legitimate contest. Her opponents didn't just lose. They looked like they had survived an ordeal. She wasn't performing moves, she was trying to win fights. The mystique around her grew exponentially. She didn't do interviews, she didn't appear in comedy backstage segments, she simply showed up, fought with a terrifying purpose, and left. She was AEW's avenging angel of authenticity. Tonight was different. For the first time since that fateful night, AEW had advertised that Arissa LeBrock would address the fans live in the center of the ring. The anticipation was electric. What would she say? Would she thank the fans for their support? Would she finally crack a smile and embrace her new role as the people's champion? The atmosphere inside the arena was one of pure celebration. As her stark, simple music hit, the crowd erupted. The ovation was long, loud, and deeply emotional, a sustained roar of appreciation. Arissa walked to the ring with the same measured, purposeful stride, but the camera caught a flicker in her eyes as she surveyed the thousands of fans on their feet, their faces filled with adoration. She stepped through the ropes, took the microphone from the ring announcer, and stood in the center of the ring, letting the chants of "Arissa, Arissa" wash over her for a full minute. It was the perfect babyface moment, a hero's welcome. She looked poised to deliver a heartfelt thank you, to cement her bond with the audience that had embraced her when she was at her most vulnerable. No one could have predicted that she was about to take all that goodwill, all that adoration, and use it as fuel for a fire that would burn the entire AEW women's division to the ground. She had 15,000 people in the palm of her hand, ready to follow her anywhere. And then she clenched her fist. Arissa finally raised the microphone, and the thunderous ovation slowly subsided to a respectful hush. "A few weeks ago," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I stood on a stage and I told the truth. My truth. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do." She paused, and a wave of supportive cheers filled the silence. "You," she said, gesturing to the crowd. "You listened. You understood. In my most vulnerable moment, you didn't see weakness. You saw strength. And for that, I thank you." The arena exploded. This was it. This was the moment of connection they had been waiting for. But as the cheers died down, a subtle shift occurred. The gratitude in her eyes was replaced by a cold, analytical steel. Her posture straightened. "Your reaction that night taught me something," she continued, her tone losing its warmth. "It taught me that what this business, what you people are truly starving for, is reality. You are tired of the cartoons. You are tired of the pantomime. You want something real to believe in." The crowd, still buzzing, roared in agreement. They thought she was still on their side. They were wrong. "But then I went backstage," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "And I looked around the women's locker room. And I saw that the disease of acting is a plague in this company. I watched women practice their goofy catchphrases in the mirror. I saw them mapping out their choreographed taunts. I saw them discussing what color glitter would best pop on camera. And I realized, I am the only one who is not playing a part." The mood in the arena began to shift. A confused murmur rippled through the stands. Where was this going? "You cheer for me because I'm real," she said, her voice now dripping with contempt. "And then you cheer for them, the very caricatures that I stand against. Your applause is meaningless because you give it to everyone. You give it to the heroes in capes and the villains in cheap leather. You have become addicted to the performance, and they are your willing dealers." The first smattering of boos began to echo through the building. The hero was turning on them. Arissa simply smirked. "So tonight, my thank you is over. Tonight is an intervention. Tonight, I call out the fakeness. Tonight, I start the purge." She didn't just name names, she took a scalpel to their souls and dissected their characters live on air for the world to see. Arissa paced the ring, the boos now growing louder, mixing with the confused cheers from fans who refused to believe what they were hearing. "Let's start with Starlight Stella Sparkle," Arissa began, a venomous smile on her lips. The camera cut to Stella backstage, a bubbly, beloved baby face, her face falling in shock. "You come out here with your rainbow tassels and your glitter bombs, blowing kisses to the crowd. You're not a wrestler, you're a children's birthday party entertainer. Your offense is as soft as your character, all style and no substance. You are not a fighter, you are a plush toy. Show me something real, Stella, or stay in the toy box where you belong." The boos intensified. Next, she turned her attention to another fan favorite. "And then there's the matriarch of misery, Nocturna," Arissa sneered. The camera found the dark, gothic wrestler Nocturna, who just stared at the monitor, her face a mask of cold fury. "You cover yourself in black lace and fake cobwebs and pretend to be some creature of the night. You whisper vague threats about darkness and pain. You didn't crawl out of the shadows, you crawled out of a Hot Topic clearance bin from 2005. Your entire persona is a high school poetry project. The only misery I see is having to watch you pretend to be scary. Take off the Halloween costume Nocturna and show me the real woman, if there's one under all that eyeliner." The crowd was now in an uproar. She was systematically tearing down their heroes. The commentary team was stunned. "This is a bridge-burning exercise," Jim Ross said gravely. "She's making an enemy of every single woman in that locker room." Arissa seemed to feed on the negative energy. "And how could I forget the veteran? The Queen of Queens, Regina King," she said, targeting the respected locker room leader. "You talk about your grit, your heart, your passion for this business. But what I see is a woman desperately clinging to a catchphrase she came up with 5 years ago. You are a nostalgia act. You fight the same match, you cut the same promo, and you expect the same adulation. Your passion has been replaced by routine. You are no longer a queen, you are a comfortable relic. Show me the fire that got you here, Regina, or abdicate the throne. You don't just declare war on the soldiers. You march straight to the palace and demand the surrender of the crown." Arissa stood in the center of the ring, a lone figure against a sea of booing fans. She had taken aim at the baby faces, the heels, and the veterans. There was only one target left. "But the disease," she said, her voice rising to a crescendo, "always starts at the head. It trickles down from the person holding the most important prize in this division." The crowd knew who was next. Chants for the AEW Women's World Champion, the war goddess Jade Yamamoto, began to fill the arena. Jade was a dominant, respected champion, a true final boss. "Jade Yamamoto," Arissa said, her voice laced with a mocking respect, "our war goddess, the unbeatable champion. You come out here in your ornate, samurai-inspired armor, carrying that championship like it's a sacred relic. You talk about honor, about battle, about being a modern-day warrior." Arissa let out a short, sharp, humorless laugh. "Your armor is a costume. Your war is a performance. Your honor is a marketing slogan. You are the worst of all of them because you wrap your fakeness in a cloak of legitimacy. You are so committed to the act that I think you've actually started to believe it yourself." The camera showed Jade Yamamoto watching a monitor backstage, her face unreadable, her jaw set like stone. "You hold the one thing that is supposed to represent the pinnacle of reality in this sport, a championship, but you treat it like a prop for your cosplay. That title doesn't represent the best fighter, it represents the best character." Arissa then looked directly into the camera, as if speaking to Jade personally. So this is my challenge to you, War Goddess. I don't want a wrestling match. I don't want a 5-star classic for the critics. I want a fight. No grand entrance, no armor, no gimmick. Show up with your fists taped and that belt in your hand. Show me the woman, not the goddess. Show me the fighter, not the character. Prove to me, and to these people you fooled, that there is something real underneath all that pageantry. Or you can just admit that I'm right, and hand over the one thing you have that I want, the symbol of reality in this division. The sound of a single promo being cut in the ring was so powerful it emptied the entire women's locker room, not to attack, but to watch a world burn. While Arissa held the arena hostage, the scene backstage was pure chaos. As soon as she had called out Stella Sparkle by name, the entire dynamic of the locker room shifted. Women who were previously stretching, chatting, or getting ready for their own matches all stopped what they were doing and gravitated towards the monitors. When she eviscerated Nocturna's gimmick, a tense silence fell over the room. When she called Regina King a relic, you could see the veteran wrestler clench her fists, her knuckles white, a look of profound indignation on her face. A younger wrestler tried to say something supportive to her, but Regina just shook her head, her eyes glued to the screen. Teehee was a shared, public humiliation, and the anger was palpable. The room was a powder keg. Stella Sparkle was openly weeping, being consoled by a backstage producer. Nocturna simply walked away from the monitor and started methodically wrapping her hands, her dark eyes promising a violent retribution. The room was divided between shock, fury, and a terrifying sense of respect for the sheer audacity of what Arissa was doing. Then came the call-out of the champion. Jade Yamamoto, who had been watching in her private dressing room, strode out into the main locker room area. Every other woman went silent. Jade didn't say a word. She just watched the monitor as Arissa challenged her to a real fight, her expression a cold, unreadable mask of fury. At the same time, the internet was having a complete and utter meltdown. The hashtag #DaRnChio was trending #1 worldwide within 3 minutes. Wrestling Twitter was a war zone. One camp of fans was livid. Arissa is an arrogant hypocrite, disrespecting the women who built this division. Another camp was ecstatic. Finally, someone with the guts to call out the cartoon characters. Arissa is what wrestling needs. The debate was ferocious, personal, and it was everywhere. It was the ultimate fans go crazy moment. A star so polarizing she had single-handedly divided the entire fan base and turned her own locker room into a collection of enemies, all in the space of 10 minutes. She didn't just declare war on a division. She ripped up the old rulebook and rewrote the first and only law in her own image: be real or be gone. Arissa LeBrock stood in the ring for a final, defiant moment. The chorus of boos was now overwhelming, but she didn't flinch. She had come for a reaction, and she had received a tidal wave. She held the microphone up one last time, her voice cutting through the noise with chilling clarity. "So, to every woman in the back," she declared, her eyes sweeping across the arena as if she could see through the walls, to every cartoon, to every caricature, to every performer hiding behind a gimmick. The age of acting is over. This is now the era of reality. My era. The line has been drawn. You can stay over there in your fantasy world and play wrestler, or you can cross it and come find me. But I promise you, if you step into this ring with me, you better not be playing a part." With that, she dropped the microphone with a resounding thud. The sound echoed like a gunshot, signaling the start of a war. She turned and walked back up the ramp, never once looking back, the boos of 15,000 people washing over her like rain. The legacy of this promo was immediate. She was no longer a beloved hero. She was no longer a misunderstood soul. She was now a tweener in the truest sense of the word, a wrestling purist, an ideologue, an antagonist to all who did not meet her impossible standard of authenticity. She hadn't just created one feud with the champion. She had created a dozen compelling feuds with every single woman she had named, and even those she hadn't. Every woman on the roster now had a personal, legitimate reason to want to tear her apart. From that moment on, every women's match on the card had an underlying tension. Were they real enough for Arissa? The entire division now revolved around her ideology. She had made herself the sun, and every other woman was now a planet caught in her gravitational pull, forced to react to her. She had become the most important and the most hated woman in all elite wrestling. And as she disappeared through the tunnel, a cold, satisfied smile finally graced her lips. It was exactly what she wanted.